Well, it looks like the alternative media is getting thick and heavy. Talking about the United States is going to fall any minute. Yeah, maybe we got domestic enemies. I'm not going to say maybe. We do have domestic enemies. We do have domestic enemies. But we also got foreign enemies. No doubt about it. If people are going to get the knee-jerk reaction against America, I got no use for them either. So that's the way it comes down, But as far as what's going on in the world, when you have global tensions, there is one thing up there that really becomes more important than anything, that's more to safety than any metal out there. Actually, it's called black gold. It's called oil. And oil's been moving up. Oil's been moving up. Always during global tensions. Well, you heard, about Ukraine and Putin's cut off their oil and stuff like that to the refineries, which will be the same thing he'll do to Europe later on. I should ad-lib a little more about that, but it gets really lengthy if I get into too many sidetracks. But basically, it's always been Russian policy to influence political leaders towards a socialistic united Europe. Basically, it'll be an overripe acquisition for the communist bloc. Communist bloc with a modified capitalism on the top, where the oligarchs own everything, which it seems to be the alternative media seems to be cheering on. But the oil deal is really where I say it's going to lead the charge for the metals too. And like I said on many other videos, that the global reset is not going to be some walk in the park. It's actually going to mean a lot of catastrophe. It could lead to World War III. I mean, if you have a fight, it'd be nice just to make money on silver where it goes up to like $100 or so eventually, and you make a bunch of money, and that's great, and you can enjoy that money. But if it gets really out of hand, if the dollar does go down like 50-60% or something like that or more, we're going to have some serious problems here in the United States locally. But you just have to remember this. What is a dollar? What is a currency? It's a medium of exchange. They have the type of currencies that have intrinsic wealth, that are owned currencies or whatever, owned money. But also it's just a medium of exchange. Actually, what really makes the world go is true productivity of goods and services, and hard goods, hard capital goods. That's why you don't want to overly tax capital, because it kills production. But that's really what makes it go. And actually in the United States, we talk about the Bakken oil reserve, where there's a real lot of oil and gold and stuff, and it's in Alaska. There's a lot. And also in our national parks, which is not allowed to be touched, it makes the Bakken oil reserve look like nothing. There's a load of natural resource in the United States. Unfortunately, if this deal plays out, and the other side of the world, the oligarchs, the evil oligarchs on the other side of the world that play like they're saints, win out over the United States because of the stupidity of our elite, they will exploit all the resources in our natural parks to their advantage. It will happen that way. So, these alternative media clowns are idiots in a lot of ways, because they're not seeing the whole picture. The whole picture is, we don't just have problems where there's corruption in the United States. There's vastly more corruption in other parts of the world, and they are enemies of the United States. We actually have the tools in our system to correct the situation at any given time. We just got a lethargic public that, they think business as usual forever until there's a major problem. Then they want a fast solution. But anybody that's got some backbone and honor and real patriotism in a true sense, where you're trying to uphold the Bill of Rights more than anything, which is freedom of speech, number one, that you need to be addressing the situations and remedying them, and not tearing down the United States and say, oh, the United States is the worst thing in the world. It's not. Not at all. And the situation today is actually not the worst it's ever been. The United States, before the United States was strong, there was a lot of problems going on in the 1800s too, and then all throughout the 1800s, even before the Civil War. The only reason it overcame those problems is because of people with fortitude and stuck by the United States. And, we similarly, like, you can look back to situations in Rome where Hannibal was sacked the city and destroyed Rome, and also destroyed the largest army the Romans ever fielded to that time in a matter of 3 hours. Did the Romans give up? No. They actually fought this guy for the next 2 decades till they finally won. And that might be the situation in the United States. But it's not going to be the armchair conspiracy clowns, or it's not going to be, I'm sitting in an armchair, but I do stuff. I have to sit in an armchair to present this right now. But it's not going to be them, and it's not going to be the ones that have the blinders on that are going to save the United States. If you look back, actually, some of the cops in Newark, New Jersey, which is considered more of like a liberal bastion where there's like, liberal socialistic politics happens in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. Actually, some of the police were wearing the 3% badge. The 3% being there was the 3% of Americans that fought against the Crown of England to gain independence in 1776. It was really 3% of the population that did that, and it was some of the cops and the police that it's a mixed bag with police. You don't know if everybody's 100% good. That's just the way it is with every damn thing out there, So nothing's like really cut in stone. Nothing's black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray in between every single area there is. Now, also, I also want to address something else. They talk about the dollar falling, but you know what? I was listening to Steve Quayle a little bit. He's talking about, they're going to put the Russian ruble as the world reserve currency, and no, they're not. No, they're not. You know why? The Russian ruble, basically, he always uses this phrase, the Russian ruble is rubble. Actually, the Russian ruble has been going down against the U.S. dollar for the last year. They're in shambles. Their GDP is actually going down. They're actually running out of money. And it's always a game of last man standing. The one problem we have is that Obama is a weak leader, and the other problem we have actually is that it may be that it was designed that we deliberately have a weak leader because what went on recently is they took out all the top nuclear officers and stuff, strategic officers that we have in the military, and it looks like they're setting up the United States for something later on. Like this game with the Ukraine is not going to be the catalyst, but it's going to be a predecessor to lead up to something else, to something else, to something else. And I think the elite in the West are deliberately pushing the West down. So anybody that's actually somebody's for freedom, Bill of Rights, individual rights, freedom for all peoples, has two enemies. They have enemies in the West and they have enemies on the other side of the world. And Vladimir Putin is as bad as he's playing his part, and he's not going to do you no favors. So, maybe people in Russia might like that, but I have to say this. If anything happens in the United States, I already know who my enemies are. That's all there is to it. I already know who my enemies are, and there's a lot of deflection going on where they're blaming the Jews for everything, but Vladimir Putin is not Jewish, and sometimes people say, well, that's good because and they're missing the whole boat. Stalin wasn't Jewish, Hitler wasn't Jewish, Napoleon wasn't Jewish, and they all seem to have this Napoleon complex where it's always this little short person that wants to take over the world. It was either Napoleon, it was Hitler, it was Stalin. Stalin was another one. He used to always paint his pictures where he's a big giant guy. Man of Steel was his big freaking nickname. Then you got Vladimir Putin. He's another clown like this too. But the problem is the American people elected Barack Obama, and they weren't thinking. They weren't thinking. Now me, I went with Gary Johnson because I didn't like either one of those two clowns out there. But what does this have to do with silver? Global tensions are going to drive silver up quite a bit. It's starting to move edge upward, but my contention will be this, that it may get some serious legs and bust right through 50 like butter, maybe even this year, which sounds nuts right now to say this, but if it does, it's going to come back down below 50. But as far as buying it for like 18 or 20 again or 15, I think those days are long gone. I think those days are long gone. Global tensions are going to push up, well, number one, black gold, which is crude oil, and gold will, when oil goes up, the correlation between gold and oil is very tight, and that's when the correlation between gold and oil starts, even silver and oil actually starts getting tighter. There's absolutely no correlation practically at all during normal times, but it's like a whole nother set of scenario set of facts and conditions that comes into play when global tensions come about. Black gold is actually your number one safety. It is. It is. And you actually should have that as a, not only physical silver, you should have physical fuel. You really should. I also want to point out, the alternative media is always knocking the United States industrial mate and all this type of stuff. Well, it looks like PMI on China is now 48.5, so it's below 50. And actually, to break even, it really needs to be above 50 due to inflation. So they're contracting in their manufacturing. Yet at the same time, we're seeing some life. You see, under normal times, if you saw something like the PMI of China, which is the big the user of raw materials, a big powerhouse that uses lots of raw industrial materials, you would actually, normal times, you would see a major pullback in the metals under those type of on that type of news, where the PMI of China is now 48.5, most recent numbers. But in the face of global tensions, and actually oil leads the charge. Oil leads the charge. I'm actually doing my own preparation on things, and I always have. I've been like this for decades, but I'm not like a worry about it either. I just do things here and there. That's just how it is. Silver is one part of that game, and I will unload silver if it goes, physical silver, if it goes solidly above 50. And if I decide to buy land with it, fine. I'm not going to hold currency forever. Nobody does. If you look at any business or any individual out there, nobody holds currency forever. Everybody knows this. Every business knows that. I may decide to buy land someplace else, and maybe in another part of the country too. So, I have other places to go too. What the hell, right? So, that's what I would do if I unload some silver above 50. But I'd probably still keep the bulk of it. I know I will, because I think eventually it's going to go way to hell over 50. What's really going to probably happen, though, I think there's a lot of talk on the alternative media about corruption in the West and all this type of stuff. And actually, that's one of the big things that the Russians talk about. The decadent West, it's going to fall apart. The Westerners are going to fight each other. But, by and large, that's not really true. There's actually a hell of a lot more corruption going on in the Russian military. They talk about, I'll tell you this, they talk about gays in the military, that they're allowed to be in the American military, and Russia says, or Putin says, oh, that's the worst thing in the world. But actually, I'll tell you right now, there's so much corruption going on in the Russian army that there's actual soldiers being sold homosexually by officers for money. There's shit like that going on in their freaking army. And it's not like it's all over freaking everywhere, but it is going on. And tell me, it's not broadcast. Now, the major media, if they wanted to make a big deal about that in the United States, they could. But, they don't do that. It's the major media in the United States is a joke and a half. And actually, I don't know, maybe they're just playing it where they want to weaken the West, and out of the ashes of a great turmoil comes a new world order. That's probably the whole game that's going on. But actually, I listened to something where Wolf Blitzer, talk about pussyfooting around about words. We don't want to use the word Russian invasion of Ukraine. Well, actually, they got thousands of troops there. They put up big concrete barricades with trucks and stuff like that across the roadways. They got helicopters flying in, and they got ships in the area. What the hell do you think that is, man? And tanks, right? So what the hell's going on? That's an invasion. That's an invasion. We don't want to use the word invasion. It is an invasion. What the hell are you talking about? And this guy, that was the president of Ukraine, I don't even care if the West was trying to back the other guys to get them out, because Ukrainians remember the 1930s, how Ukraine was the biggest breadbasket of Europe. The only ones that actually produce more grain than the Ukraine area is the United States. And the Ukrainians were deliberately starved out, and 10 million people genocided by the Russian government. You think the Ukrainians don't remember this kind of stuff? Do you think the Ukrainians want these guys, the Russian puppet in charge of themselves with a, opulence way above even what most of like Wall Street banksters even have? This guy lives like an opulent, like the guy that's taking refuge in Yankovic. I forgot his goddamn name. I don't remember these stupid names. I don't want to remember them, man. They're idiots. But I want to remember them like the goodbye history. But the thing is, the guy hides in Russia. The guy hides in Russia. So what the hell is he? He's a Russian puppet. That's all he is. There's no comparison. There's no comparison. I mean, the United States doesn't freaking invade Mexico. These freaking people putting out crap like that on the internet. They say, oh, it's like the United States invading Mexico to install their puppet president. The United States doesn't do that. The United States doesn't have shit to do with that. Nothing. It's a free election. Free election. That's what happens. So, I mean, there's a lot of shit. The internet's rife with a lot of crap. And I tell you right now, the major media is full of it, and the alternative media is full of it. They're both full of it. They both are giving you bad facts. One's going one extreme to one way, and one's going extreme the other way. The only thing to remember is to stick with the Bill of Rights. And actually, if you're looking at the Constitution of the United States, there's only one body, representative body in the United States that's allowed to coin money, and that is the House of Representatives. The Federal Reserve is a bankster's tool. That's all it is. And that's why we're sticking with silver. But, if you stick with silver and the dollar goes down a lot, your problems aren't going to be over with. It's not going to remedy the situation. The biggest problems we have is not only from within, but it's also from without. It's from the propaganda machine that's working in the alternative media. And I think that the powers that be in the major media are actually endorsing indirectly the alternative media because they want you to reject the great way of life that the Americans actually have. But the problem is most Americans are too lethargic to fix things, only when they only get off their dead ass when the economy's bad. That's really the whole problem. Otherwise, in the United States, we got tools like crazy to fix things. We have common law. We have trial by jury. We have judges in all our states that are elected by the people. So if they're no good, they can be ousted. Basically, we got a lot of power even to make laws just by trial by jury because we have common law. Russia doesn't have common law. They got civil law. They got a magistrate come up there and they say, guilty, done. Boom. Gulag. That's what they got. And people are praising that in America like that's a good thing. Stupid. Anyway. So just remember that your investment is solid due to global tensions that are going to be coming up. But your investment in silver is not the final answer. The final answer actually is everybody's going to have to get up their dead ass and do things and, survive on their own and make sure that we fight not just our domestic enemies, but our foreign enemies, because we're going to have a hell of a lot more foreign enemies than domestic enemies. The domestic enemies are far and few between. As a matter of fact, the domestic enemies don't even have to be fought, per se. The domestic enemies can be easily ousted, but the problem is we have a lethargic public sitting back on their ass and not doing nothing about it. That's the problem. That's 99% of the problem. Now, they complain about Congress or whatever, but they re-elect these guys every 2 years. I mean, who the hell can blame for that? Who can blame for that? That's why sometimes, not that, we also have spies that come into the United States from Russia and Eastern Europe, but sometimes people from former satellite countries of Russia that were in Eastern Europe make the best U.S. citizens because they actually take a conscientious role in what's going on. They don't want the corruption. They'll do more than what the average American does. The average American thinks it's going to go along like this forever, and it's not. But I also have to state this. It took a long, long, long time for Rome to fall. And, we got maybe a little bit different situation because unlike Rome was not exactly being murdered from within, in some ways it was, though, it took a long, long time for it to fall. It actually was more fell from the inside out than it fell from the outside in. It became not just corrupt, but there was a lot of civil turmoil and stuff like this. But just remember, there's people like Oleg Panarin. I think it was Igor Panarin. He wrote in 2010 about the division the United States would break apart into 6 parts. The Russians wish this to happen. They want this to happen. Putin's not your friend, man. Not in the least. This guy just wants to use you up like some American scum. They hate you. They hate you. Putin hates your guts. And it's amazing that Americans are getting behind it, because they'll be the first ones that Putin would sacrifice too. They're useful idiots, just like the classic, communist useful idiots. We got a load of that going on in the United States too. But I guess it was Igor Panarin. He was writing that in 2010, the United States would fall apart into 6 sections. And he was writing this during the time of 2008, 2009, during the financial crisis. So you can bet anything that any crisis that comes up in the United States, Russian jerks will be putting a lot of dirt on the West to freaking dishearten Westerners as much as possible. And, they're being very successful. They're actually being very successful. But it only takes a few percentage of the Americans to stick with what really is right to make the situation right. I will not waste my breath on, people that are brainwashed, if they're going to just love Putin because they're weak. So a lot of people that are weak get behind strong leaders all the time because it's a good place to hide. And there's a lot of people that are behind Putin for that reason. They're weak themselves, so they go behind somebody who's strong because they think somebody who's strong is going to protect them. That's why they get behind him. There's a lot of people like that. I'm not going to waste my breath trying to convince those kind of people of anything, because I think they're freaking useless. They're useless. They're worms. They'll go along with whatever situation happens in the long run. So I always keep my eye on the ball. And my eye is strictly on preserving the Bill of Rights as a bastion of the main bastion laws that we need to protect the people. These aren't laws that give people rights. These are laws that make sure the people have their inherent rights protected against a government that goes wrong. And they don't have this in Russia. So, I diverged a little bit on this silver update, but just remember that global tensions will bring up oil a great deal, and you've seen oil actually, I think, at top 104 on a WTI. It's also going to bring up gold a great deal, and that's where we're going to see silver fly. The alternative media is going to start telling you that the dollar's going to oblivion. But if you look at the silver's doing far better against the ruble than it is doing against the dollar. The ruble has actually been declining against the dollar for the last year quite a bit. And the Chinese Yuan has also been taking major hits recently too. And China's PMI is 48.5. So it's not exactly what the major alternative media is painting. They're a bunch of bullshit too. I don't trust them. I think they're controlled opposition. Real opposition stays with the Bill of Rights all the way. And I'm going to say this, there's a lot of this Zionist Mossad conspiracy stuff on, I know some of it's true, but you got to remember, there's always the one basis point out there that's the elite of the elite that has a very different policy from other people as a whole. 99.9% of Jewish people 100% wholeheartedly support individual rights in the Bill of Rights. That's really what it is. So, a lot of times these patriots, depends on who they are, they lose sight of that fact because, there's that one basis point of Jewish people that are elitists, just like you can find that one basis point of any type of people that are too. It's all over the world. But 99.9% of Jewish people are true patriots. They may support Israel too, which is fine. And, but they support the United States too. So they're not against us in any way, fashion at all. And like I said, I'm not Jewish. I'm actually Catholic, but and I know the Catholic Church did stuff to the Jews back in the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, but they haven't in the last 100-something years at least. So, we're pretty much on the same page. And some people may not like that, but, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. just remember that everybody has inherent rights, and individual rights are protected best by laws that keep, rogue elements of the government in check, and that is the Bill of Rights. So, it's silver is one aspect of protecting your ass and keeping you independent in a real way, but there's a whole mosaic of things going on here, and beware of that alternative media, because they are there's a lot of disinformation out there, big time, in the alternative media. They make it look like the West is ready to collapse, and I'll tell you right now, China and Russia look like they're about ready to collapse. So, a lot of stuff going on.